Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is June 24th, 2023, and let's get to the news happening in Russia. Yes, Russia. Why? Because there is a coup happening. It's historic, guys. This is, you can write this day in, your calendar in the history books because this is really the beginning of the end for Putin's regime and perhaps even Russia. Why? Well, because Prigozhin is calling for a coup against Shoigu and Gerasimov and indirectly against Putin now. And so this is all following, allegedly, an unprovoked missile attack on a Wagner camp yesterday in the morning, which basically pissed off Prigozhin, and he decided that he'll go ahead with a coup. He has nothing to lose. But in reality, I think this stems all from a few weeks ago when Prigozhin's hand was forced into signing a contract with the Russian MOD, essentially making Prigozhin lose control over the Wagner PMC army, right? All the soldiers had to sign an official contract with the Russian Ministry of Defense. So basically, this was a move by Shoigu, Gerasimov, and again, with Putin's approval, to force the Wagner forces to be under Putin's control now. And I think since then, Prigozhin's been plotting a military coup. And I think this is, this is a result of perhaps weeks of planning, because what is currently happening is very, very organized. And you can see the several audio statements that Prigozhin has been making. Even in my previous video, it's absolutely shocking, to think that he's openly criticizing literally everything that's happening in the Russian military. So I think that this was actually expected, but to say that I was expecting it to be in such a grand scale, I cannot say that. And so you can see in one of his statements, Prigozhin is saying, we cannot be destroyed, we have goals, we are all ready to die, all 25,000, and after that, another 25,000, because we're dying for the Russian people who must be freed from those people who are beating the civilian population. And so he sent a lot of audio recordings already, pretty much a man that has nothing to lose at this point. And so, as I said, it's very likely that he's been already preparing for this for many, many weeks. And Prigozhin is a man that has nothing to lose. He has crossed the Rubicon, right? You cannot come back from this anymore. So he'll stick with this plan until the very bitter end. And so this does not sound good for the Russian people, because this can turn into a very bloody, perhaps civil war in Russia. And this is all happening, guys. Don't forget that this is all happening because of Ukraine's unity, courage, and strength for the last year, close to a year and a half now, of fighting against the Russian forces in Ukraine and their brutal tactics to assimilate, to kill the Ukrainians, to do everything possible to ruin Ukraine. And yet the Ukrainians stood strong and opposed this force, and now they're crumbling from within, literally imploding. And this is all thanks to Ukraine. This would not have happened if Ukraine would not have stood up against Putin's regime, Wagner forces in Bakhmut. It's all because of Ukraine. So let's not forget about it. Now you can see some images. Of course, I got to show you some images. This is only helping Ukraine getting close to total victory against Russia. I'm under no impression that this is going to take a very long time still, and this is just the beginning. And in terms of timeline, nobody can predict how quickly this is going to finish, right? But the fact is that the Russian forces took control, the Wagner forces today took control of Rostov-on-Don, which is one of the largest cities that is close to the Ukrainian border. It's a major supply hub. It's a major city that supports the Russian forces in the occupied territories in Ukraine. And it's one of the access points for these trucks, the tanks that are meant to go to defend Donbass, Zaporizhia. So essentially, they've cut off one of the most important cities for the Russian forces in Ukraine. They're also taking over the military HQ of the Southern Military District of Rostov. As you can see here, this is one of the pictures of the many tanks that they've brought there already. And they're essentially, just hanging around the military HQ there. You can also see that the Wagner forces are very well prepared. They have Panzer S-1 anti-air defense systems and other, flatbeds driving their transporting the tanks. They're very well organized, which is extremely surprising. But I think this is an indication of, how well prepared they were, and probably this was in the planning for many weeks already. They've already downed the Russian helicopters. Now there's reports that 2 of them were already downed. A downed Antonov 26, what it seems like. This is huge, guys. This is, if you would have told me yesterday this would be happening within Russia, I would not have believed you. But it is. And the most important thing here, if we're looking at Ukraine, is that the Russian soldiers in Zaporizhia, in Donbass, they won't last long, because essentially the Wagner forces are cutting off crucial supply roads, supply lines that are meant to go towards Zaporizhia and Donbass. And these soldiers that are currently defending, Zaporizhia, Donbass, north of Ukraine, in Luhansk, their supply routes are going to get exhausted within the next few days. Already that they're stretched thin, their accesses from the south have been obliterated by the Ukrainian forces 2 days ago with the storm shadows hitting the Chonhar bridge. And now you have been completely cut off from eastern Ukraine within, between the Russian and Ukrainian borders. So what is currently happening is, I don't know how quickly this is gonna, crumble, but it seems like it's gonna start crumbling very quickly. So the next presentation is in Moscow. And in Moscow, Putin is afraid. I'll show you as well at the very end his speech today. And Putin has decided to close most of the bridges over the Oka River south of Moscow. There's also reports that they're considering to blow them up if the Wagner PMC gets too close to Moscow area, the greater Moscow area. You can see that they've blocked them with fire trucks or just regular trucks and flatbeds. There's total panic and chaos going on throughout the major Russian cities close to the Ukrainian border as well. The authorities are stopping cars and checking everyone in the Kremlin. There's a sense of panic going on in Russia right now. It's crazy. And I'm thinking, wow, how quickly, I shouldn't say how quickly, but how the tables have turned and how the mighty have fallen. This is exactly the playbook that Putin used back in 2014 in Ukraine. Chaos, little green men appearing out of nowhere in different large Ukrainian cities in Kharkiv, in Odessa, in Donetsk, in Dnipropetrovsk back then. And there was total chaos. Nobody understood what was going on. And right now, this is, they pulled the reverse card, right? The Ukrainian people pulled the reverse card. They used Wagner against Putin. And so what we're seeing now is just a complete chaos throughout Russia. People are panic buying in Rostov and other cities, right? I think this is only helping Ukraine's cause because the Russian people are realizing this is not a special military operation anymore. This is a special defensive operation against their own forces, right? The Wagner forces that a few weeks ago, everybody was applauding at the fact that they took over Bakhmut or the majority of Bakhmut. And now they're taking over Rostov, Voronezh, going to Moscow. They've taken also Milorovo city where there's an important air base. It's crazy how things are turning around right now. The other thing that's turning around is in Belarus. And so this is a Belarus, I believe, general who's calling the Belarusian army to overthrow Lukashenko. And there's also a report that Lukashenko sent his family to Turkey. There was an airplane that left Minsk last night to Turkey. And so there are reports that it's perhaps Lukashenko who's sending his extended family and his family in Turkey for safety purposes. And so this is, it's not translated, so I'll try to translate it as best as I can, but essentially he's calling the Belarusian army to overthrow Lukashenko and take this opportunity to take back Belarus. So he says now that the day in Rostov appeared to be very interesting. We all understand that the Russian Federation is built on lies. We are looking and watching the active phase of the coup. Maybe Prigozhin is going to win, maybe he will not. And essentially he says that the pro-Russian narrative, the pro-Russian stance that Lukashenko has been standing on has led us to, total chaos. And he says that we need to take this opportunity. The roadblocks aren't there anymore. Again, I'm not literally translating it perfectly, but in my own words, because it's difficult to do it live. We need to figure out what to do next, because either we'll use the chance right now to become a European state, or the Belarusian state will be forever lost. We have nobody to count on but ourselves. And I believe that we will figure it out. Let's get together, and everything else we'll deal with it later. And he's calling all of the Belarusian brigades and army and soldiers to rebel. This is historic as well for Belarus, if they can seize the moment. Again, don't forget that 3 years ago in 2020, millions of people came out to protest Lukashenko's victory during the elections, right? I believe that the Belarus people are not standing by Lukashenko. Unfortunately, many of them already left Belarus a long time ago, so there's more of pro-Lukashenko supporters now. But I have no doubt that with what's currently ongoing, the Belarus people need to take initiative. This is their chance to overthrow Lukashenko. You can see how paranoid he is, already sending his family to Turkey, and he's already, planning, contingencies to escape perhaps, or sign a deal with Europe, right? He's clearly seeing what's going on in Russia, and he does not want it to happen to him, because he's going to end up like Gaddafi. Now, for the grand finale, it's Putin's appeal speech. And guess what? Putin's not sitting comfortably anymore as he was on February 24th, 2022, explaining that Ukraine does not exist, that it's creation of Lenin and all his historical inaccuracies. Now he's standing up, his spine is stiffened up, and he's panicking. So let's see what he has to say. I appeal to the citizens of Russia, to the personnel of the armed forces, law enforcement agencies, and special services. To the soldiers and commanders who are now fighting in their combat positions, repulsing the enemy's attacks. They're doing it heroically. I know. I spoke to the commanders of all the directions again tonight. I'm also addressing those who have been duped or threatened into this criminal adventure and pushed towards this grave crime of armed mutiny. Russia today is fighting an uphill battle for its future, reflecting the aggression of neo-Nazis and their bosses. In fact, the entire military, economic, information machine of the West is directed against us. We're fighting for the life and safety of our people, for sovereignty and independence, for the right to be and remain Russia, a state with a 1,000-year history. This battle, and the destiny of our people is being decided, requires the unity of all forces. There's clearly no unity. Consolidation and responsibility, when everything that weakens us should be cast aside. So this is just part of his speech, but you can sense how Putin now is probably going to be in his bunker indefinitely until the very bitter end, like Hitler did. This is historic, guys, and let me know what you think about the ongoing situation. Do you think this is going to be a quick coup? I think it's not going to be a quick coup. I think it's going to be a long, bloody civil war right now. And some people are very doubtful that this is real and that this is set up by Putin or whatever. This is a conspiracy by the West, or I don't believe any of that. I think this is real. This is the product of a year and a half, or close to a year and a half, of a terrible war, a terrible mistake that Putin committed, thinking that he would easily grab Ukraine. And instead, this is what we're seeing. Bloodshed is not going to be shed in Ukraine anymore, but in Russia. It's unfortunate, but at the same time, it's necessary, because it's 30 years of corruption, 30 years of Russian people being duped by Putin, being told, the Russian people being told that they're a great nation, that they're the best in the world, and at the same time being stolen by Putin, their future being stolen. So yes, they're gonna have to fight. They're gonna have to fight for their future and figure it out. There's no other way at this point. So guys, again, I cannot stress enough how historic this moment is. I think, I'm gonna keep you guys obviously updated as the days go by, but I'm shocked at how quickly things have turned around, and this is only going to help Ukraine's victory. It's gonna accelerate Ukraine's victory. This entire situation that's happening in Russia is only accelerating Ukraine's total victory over Russia. And I have no doubt now that Ukraine is going to get Crimea back, is going to get Zaporizhia back, Kherson back, Luhansk back, and Donetsk back. As the little Russians, the puppets, the elites, the soldiers will be fighting each other within Russia, and will be too busy to look at Ukraine at this point. So here you go, guys. I'll keep you updated. Let me know what you think about the situation, and I will see you in the next video for sure, maybe even tomorrow. Take care.